Hey everybody, welcome back to the Live Ultralight Podcast. Today we are going to be talking about a recent trip we took over to Germany and Austria. I guess these guys even made it a little bit farther into the Netherlands. So basically a trip to Europe. We're going to be talking about that as well as the trade show that we went to. So some things regarding maybe the state of the outdoor industry, some benefits and some things that we enjoyed about this international traveling trip, and a few other things along the way, maybe some key pieces of gear. So if that's interesting to you, stay tuned. To be quite honest, it's going to be more like us talking a little bit around the water cooler and just kind of relaxing here for a minute. This is maybe not as well planned out as some of our other podcasts, so bear with us as we just chat amongst ourselves. But if you are new to the podcast, it's powered by Outdoor Vitals. That's our main business here. And this podcast is really just to inspire you guys to get outside more comfortably and more confidently. So if that's something you're interested in, hopefully we'll pay tribute to that throughout this podcast. So recently we took a trip over to Europe to attend a big trade show over there called ISPO, also known as like ISPO Outdoor, I guess, or I don't know. There's a few different names. ISPO, ISPO is like the main name of the trade show. And so we went there to, work with suppliers, meet with key business relationships we have, as well as showcase some of our products for the state of Utah, which we'll talk about. Along with that, though, we thought, hey, we're in Europe. What other things can we look at? We've been looking at, expanding sales into Europe a little bit more. So there are some things along those lines we could do, but also just enjoy our time there. So if after the trade show was over, my wife and I at least went down to Austria and spent some time just traveling and enjoying the countryside down there in the Austrian Alps. So I guess with that, let's go ahead and just dive into what this trip really was, and I guess start with ISPO. It's always interesting to go to a massive trade show like this. This trade show is really the biggest outdoor trade show in the world. For those of you that are familiar with something like that called the Outdoor Retailer here in the United States, this absolutely dwarfs the size of Outdoor Retailer. In fact, I'd probably say that ISPO, they say, is about half as big as it used to be before the pandemic. But it was probably still significantly larger than Outdoor Retailer at its biggest peak. Just a massive trade show, and it'll be really interesting to return to Munich, Germany, and see this trade show as it maybe gets back into full stride again. But it's always interesting, I guess, to just go walk around, see what businesses are doing, learn a little bit more about the global scale of the outdoors and what everyone's doing in regards to that. So yeah, I don't know. What did you guys think of the trade show?
It was interesting. I'd agree. It's always interesting to aside from kind of the business that we conduct on our own with our partners and suppliers and stuff like that. It's always interesting to just kind of be surrounded by, I guess, the industry in general, the outdoor industry, and just interesting to see the direction that brands are going, and just, I don't know, kind of get a little bit of a pulse on the giant, massive industry that it is.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned a few things, and to give perspective here, this trade show occupied 10 massive trade show halls. I'm talking like little conference center type things, like massive conference center halls. There was 10 of them a part of this trade show. But Brigham, you've kind of been mentioning just recently like the effect or the size of the outdoor industry. And I don't remember the numbers you were saying, like in the U.S., I guess, that of how much revenue or whatever is attributed to the outdoors.
Yeah, in the U.S., in 2021, it contributed to $850 billion to the U.S. economy. So that's, it's massive. And so I don't know, what the European market numbers are versus, another continent, but, suffice it to say it's a huge industry. There's a lot, and there's a lot of, it's kind of proof that there I would say luckily continues to be a demand for people to be active and involved in activities that get them outside, and like the breadth or the range of activity is really big. It's far bigger than what we typically talk about, whether that's like backpacking or even like the main outdoor recreation sports of like backpacking, climbing, snow skiing, and it's a huge range of activities. But it's I think it's a good sign for humanity that there are there's a huge demand for outdoor recreation.
Yeah. Well, Tyler, do you have any thoughts off the top of your head?
I think size perspective wise, if you've been to a trade show in the Las Vegas Convention Center, the Munich Convention Center is probably twice the size of that. So, and it's a huge space. It's organized better. The Munich Trade Show Center was organized very well. It was really cool to see all the different brands that were there and see what people were doing. So it was great to be involved, and it was good validation for us because for the other brands that I talked to, we were every bit as healthy as any other brand that we talked to there, which was great to hear. So,
yeah, I think I actually questioned for a long time why this trade show was even held in Germany, right? Because technically, from a spending perspective, the U.S. market is bigger than any other country, right? At least individual country, by a pretty considerable amount. So I was always like, why did they hold it in Germany? And honestly, after going there, I'm like, they held it in Germany because that's the only convention center big enough in the world to hold this thing. At least that's got to play some part into why they would hold it there. But I mean, I think to talk to what you're talking about, Tyler, that was a big part of the conversations we had, at least at the trade show, was just coming back to some of the reasons why we do things here at Outdoors, or how we do things here at Outdoor Vitals, specifically when it comes to direct-to-consumer in our business model there. So we were already planning to go to Munich for design and key partner relationship type things, but Tyler got to tag along on this particular event due to the fact that the state of Utah asked us to come and represent the state of Utah in their booth. And their booth is to bring attention to the state of Utah, but also to potentially expand business and exports out of the state of Utah, right? That's kind of their reasoning behind it. So what that looks like is they had a very nice space, and we occupied, like a 4 square foot of wall where we displayed a few of our products. So Tyler, you got to kind of go stand around that booth a little bit, have conversations with people, and then also do some other partner work. When you were leaving the booth. But we spent a lot of time amongst ourselves because we're next to a bunch of businesses in that booth that are from Utah, and all of those businesses are there to sell retail accounts, sell wholesale accounts, to get into stores in Germany or Europe or anywhere over there where they can sell product through those retail outlets. And so their question to us was always like, we'd have people come in, they'd look at our product, they'd be super interested in our product, and be like, hey, can we retail this? And the answer is no. And, then they'd walk away or whatever.
They'd ask why we were here.
Why are you even here?
Yeah.
Which is kind of a good point, because it ended up not being incredibly beneficial for that side of things. I mean, obviously, our big goal of something like that would be to get some PR and attention and stuff like that. But it's funny because like some of these other businesses would just straight up ask us, do you guys not like money? Like, why are you saying no to sales? Why would you not do this? And it really comes back to a lot of our core values. But it was a very interesting perspective, I guess, to go into that.
It made you question, are we doing the right thing? Like, is it really the best thing for us to not sell wholesale to some of these big distributors? And it was a good thought exercise to force us to think through why our core values are what they are, and to really be able to explain that in a succinct manner. And what it comes down to is we don't sell wholesale because it's better for the customer if we don't, really. Like that's the main thing. The fact that we have a direct connection with our customer means that our feedback cycle is a quarter the amount of time of what a brand is, where the feedback is coming into the store, and then you're lucky if it makes it from the store to the brand, right? So that's a big part of it. Another big part of it is our performance, not price side of our model, which allows us to venture into very expensive materials and processes for our products and then let the price land where it lands, because we're not trying to hit a certain price range for a certain category on some shelf of a distributor, right? Where we have full control over what we design, how the prices turn out, and we try to price as transparently and straightforward as possible by keeping that wholesale markup out of our price. So like it's better for the customer in a lot of different ways if we don't sell wholesale. But it's tempting to try and change the model when you see other people all around you landing big accounts and feeling like, oh dang, like we're getting left behind in some ways. But that's just it's not something that's necessary for our brand, and it's not something that would really benefit our customer, really. So
yeah, I think that is the best way to put it. Right now, as a company, we have a single stakeholder, which is our customers. We don't have investors telling us what to do. We don't have any other third parties, influencing our decisions, which means our decisions are based off of what's best for the customer. So it is kind of interesting to go into some of these scenarios. And some of these brands, started about the same time we were, and you're talking a little bit of numbers and stuff, at least these ones that are from the state of Utah. Like I was very familiar with them. And you can scale sales incredibly fast with wholesale accounts.
Like 10 times faster than we've grown.
Could be.
Yeah.
Very, like it could grow extremely, extremely fast. But like Tyler says, is that the best long-term play? And really, when you peel back the layers, it's not. A lot of times, we can get into the nuances of business and how sometimes scaling too fast has massive costs down the road. But I don't think we need to go there. It's more so for us, we're able to develop and keep our focus just on the best thing for our customers. And pricing isn't a big factor. We don't have to design to hit the price points. We don't have to design to hit these other things. In fact, I'm going to take us on a sidebar here for just a second. But I just had a conversation with someone who's writing an article about us. And they kind of were wanting to take something we were doing and pit us against other brands and say, like, these guys are like a great value, right? Great value. And I was like, wait a second. Like you're not trying to call us like budget, are you? And I kind of played that out a little bit with them because what we do is not about budget, but often our price is so much less than a retail brand that it gets portrayed that way. And a good example of that happened at ISPO. We were talking with a fabric mill. We're talking about our specific fabric that we developed with them and now utilize in our Shadowlight backpack. And we're talking about like how much fabric they're producing, minimum order quantities, just different things like that. And literally they're like, oh, this fabric is used by brand A, who everyone in the world knows as one of the most premium, expensive brands in the world. They're using this same exact fabric as we are now, which was really interesting, right? Because that same product, the Shadowlight, often can get even lumped into lower price point comparisons for that product, right? We've seen it happen before, but really has nothing to do with the quality or the expense of that product. It has everything to do with our direct-to-consumer business model and what that offers the customer in the long term. So it was very interesting. It's very interesting to go there and see these massive brands and then hear about people right around us, making wholesale deals and sales and scaling their business at a faster rate per se than we are. And it makes you just have to rethink and recommit to our core values, I would say.
Yeah, some of the recurring thoughts that I have are related to wholesaling and retailing. A lot of it comes down to me to authenticity and kind of the trickle down effect of what the end user actually gets in their hands. And so to give a little bit of context on this trade show, same thing with Outdoor Retailer in the U.S. These trade shows exist for brands or companies. Let's just say a downhill ski company. They exist for brand XYZ to sell on a large scale to retailers. So think like Shields or what I don't know, REI, like Moose the REIs and the backcountry.coms of the world. Like that is the objective of these trade shows, is for the retailers, the people selling these products, to make purchases from the original brands. Let's say brand XYZ. So, when it comes down to the end product that ends up in the user's hand, if you think about the chain of events that occurs to get that product in the user's hand, these retailers come to these trade shows to make mass purchases where every penny matters, right? And so the buyers of these retailer companies, they are scrutinizing every tenth of a cent because they're talking hundreds of thousands of units. And so that's an area of influence on the end product that ends up in the user's hand. Now, how does that benefit the user to have somebody buying the product prior to them buying it and nickel and diming based on something? So these buyers come to these trade shows. They speak with a product brand, and it's like used car sales. Here we go. They're trying to negotiate price down, and on the retail brand side, they want to land a huge account. They want to make that 8-figure sale. And why do they want that? Well, most of them are owned by a higher entity, a conglomerate, some kind of umbrella group. Some of them aren't, but either way, like, there's another area of influence that's affecting this decision that, in my mind, why should the consumer have to deal with the results of these negotiatings and decisions, these basically number punching. That's all it is. And so to me, it really devalues the authenticity and the soul of a brand that on the surface tells you their story or their reason for existence and says, we want to, this, and this. Well, then if that's really the case, I think there's a more straight line and authentic way to get the best product in the customer's hands without the product being affected by all, half dozen hands involved between the creation of the product and the end use of the product. So there's just so much influence that these massive purchases have on the end product. And, it's such a status quo thing that there's still great products that actually end up in the consumer's hands. But it's like the thing that I always think about is like, but what could it be? Like, what could it end up being had, the buyer not pushed a brand to, save 37 cents on a pair of shoes? What could those shoes end up being for the customer had that buyer not done that? And then, or the investor group not put pressure to land an 8-figure sale, or to land a certain margin on that 8-figure sale, which again, all that ever comes down to is affecting the cost that goes into the actual product. And generally speaking, anytime you're cutting costs, you're making compromises to the product.
And I think a good, interesting point about that too is like, go back to that pair of shoes, trying to cut 37 cents out of the cost of a pair of shoes. Well, a pair of shoes is only, as good as its weakest link. So like, where are you pulling the 37 cents out of a pair of shoes that it won't compromise anything, right? It's like, it's going to compromise something, which then could become the weakest point, which then, just spirals into the pair of shoes only going 200 miles instead of 400 miles or something along those lines. It really has a lot to do, in my mind, with something like that. One thing that also comes top of mind to me is, and this really comes full circle, is there's certain technologies that we've been able to use just this year that retail brands have not been able to use or have looked over or passed over due to pricing structures and pricing models. One of which we've talked publicly about is the Tusher rain jacket. The opportunity to print 3D on the inside of that jacket, to use multiple membranes and a few of those things, drove the cost of that jacket up quite a bit. Other retail brands had been presented with that same information and had passed on that opportunity because it didn't meet pricing models and pricing structures where they could get it onto storeroom shelves. But the reality was, it's amazing technology. We were then able to, like they were shutting it down before they even really got to testing with it. Whereas we were able to take that, say, hey, price isn't the issue, performance is what we focus on. Take it out into the field, test the crap out of it, learn that it really is incredibly impressive. It allows us to use a heavier face fabric and increase durability and all these different things, and then put it into the market. And that's just, again, an opportunity afforded to us by direct-to-consumer. Now, the cool wraparound part of this, too, was this, again, event was on a world stage, and it was really, really cool for us, at least. We had no idea this was going to be there, but when we got to the trade show, again, one of our main partners, which we've talked about publicly, is Toray, which is a Japanese company that develops fabrics and does a handful of other things for us. Toray had a lot of advertising out for waterproof breathable membranes. In other words, stuff that goes into your rain jacket. And it was really cool to then go, when we went to their booth to have conversations with them, to see that they were displaying the Tusher rain jacket as their most technical, rain piece that they wanted to show to the world on this world stage. So that was a really, really cool pat on the back, I felt like, for us as Net Revitals team, to just see that's getting seen on a world stage, and that we've been able to co-develop that with them, to push that innovation forward, to test that, to prove that, and bring it to our customers this last year, which is really, really cool. Especially, it's cool that it's just getting seen and appreciated on that world stage at ISPO. But again, if we had to sell through retail, that jacket would be a $300 or $400 jacket. And who is going to buy a $300 or $400 rain jacket? It's a valid question when you have that kind of a pricing model on the back end. So, all in all, that was a lot of our conversations that we had at ISPO was around some of those, wholesale versus direct to consumer, and just re-solidifying the pros and the cons of each of those. And we love direct to consumer. We love the path we're on, the trajectory we're on. And we love what it allows us to develop and bring to the table.
Yeah, and part of our involvement with World Trade Center Utah was a grant that we've gotten from them that helps for international business in any senses. And so part of our reason for wanting to go check out the European market was just to see how we could serve European customers better. And so I spent a lot of time thinking that through, looking at things, talking to other brands. Me and Brigham shopped some outdoor stores in Munich later in the week, and that was really interesting as well. And, I think most companies use wholesale channels to expand into new countries. That's like when I was telling them, oh, hey, me and Brigham are going to go tour this giant warehouse who has all these amazing capabilities and everything. And they're like, well, why don't you just sell to Globetrotter, which is kind of like the REI of Europe, and then you don't have to deal with any of that because they'll warehouse it all. And it's like, oh, well, that's one way of doing it, but we wanted to go see what else was available and just do our research, because we feel like we want to control every aspect of the customer experience. From the time that we design the product to the time that it gets in your hands, we want to be in control of all of that and make sure that it works well for everyone. And so we're kind of swimming upstream in all of these things that we're doing, but it's all for the greater good, and it's all also because we all believe that that model of selling wholesale and using distributors and having your stuff in stores, there's definitely like value to the convenience of being able to go and drive to a store and pick something up the same day. But in the long run, we believe that most brands are going to shift towards doing their own thing anyways, and we believe it's better for the customer no matter what. So we're really playing the long game with
We're doing the hard, easy, hopefully, versus the easy, hard approach to all this.
Well, I think it's really telling that Nike isn't taking any new retailers. You know, like they're not looking for accounts. They're actually pulling product out of stores because they want to control it more, and they have that app that they're doing more sales through than anything. And so I think in general, everything is shifting that way, and hopefully in 10 years, it'll look like we're way ahead of everyone else. But for now, we're having to play the long game.
Yeah. So a couple other points to bring it back to maybe different tangents here that I wanted to talk about was I want to talk about like sustainability, but I also just wanted to talk about like just new technologies that are coming up so I don't know if we never really talked about this, but it was pretty interesting to go to Europe and just see how much more conscious they are about everything they're doing. Like, I don't think I used any plastic forks, for instance, the entire trip, or spoons or anything. They had wooden disposable stuff. They had, recycling was way more prevalent. But really inside the trade show as well, like there's a lot of brands that are super focused on it right now. And we've always said as our brand is we've always been on the conversation of, we want to develop something that will last longer, have more durability, have a longer lifespan, be more used instead of something you buy, use once, throw away. That is the single best way for us to be more green or sustainable, is to develop for that kind of a situation. But man, like, I think just in the time that I've been, since I've started Outdoor Vital, started attending Outdoor Retailer and done that for, 10 years or whatever. That conversation has just gotten more and more and more large and powerful, and more brands are adhering to it. I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts on any of that? Was that a surprise, or did you just fully expect that element of the show? We never talk about it, so I figured it'd be worth bringing up. So we never talk about it, especially on a podcast.
To me, it seemed about on par with what I would have expected. I wasn't too surprised by it.
Yeah, I wasn't too surprised, mostly because Outdoor Retailer in the States has become so political in the last few years, and a lot of that is around, all of the sustainability kind of discussion, and so I kind of expected that, but it was impressive to me to be in Munich and just see how much more all of sustainability, making things compact, building straight upward, they're just forced to do a lot more of that than we are in the States because they have less room and less resources, and so and then too, us trying to talk to people at the show or in the stores or to the locals, trying to figure out where to backpack, they just have a lot less opportunities and a lot less space and resources than we do in the States that I think we take for granted, and that was good to see and a good reminder. I guess I just found it interesting that the conversation is just as strong, if not stronger, in Europe as it is in the States. And I think it's only going to get stronger and stronger. And it's something that I think we're paying attention to. And like I say, our philosophy has always been to design the right gear. More longevity in a piece of gear outweighs two super green, widgets. One longevity of one shirt is going to outweigh the emissions or whatever of two green shirts per se. But I think it's still something that's going to become a reality for us. In fact, I was even on a call just the other day where there's some, in Europe at least, there's some political aspects that they're going to start to force some of this stuff to happen in the long term.
that you have to meet certain thresholds of, let's just call it sustainability, even though it's way more specific than that for specific things. Just kind of like you hear the conversations around battery cars and, certain countries or states trying to ban, engines in 2030 or 2040 or 2050 or whatever it is. I think the same thing is going to kind of happen in textile, and for whatever reason, the outdoor community seems to be the pioneers of all of that, and I think the rest of the world will then be required as well to follow in that sustainability side of production. So,
yeah, luckily, our production partners aren't behind. Like they're on par with what the standards for the industry are currently, and they're continuing to innovate. And like with the Vario jacket, which all of us are wearing.
When we all black too. Come on.
When we
copycats.
I should have zipped mine all the way up and taken my vest off so we'd look all exactly the same. But no, when we first did the 3D effects insulation for the Ventus, they were telling us hey, we've got a recycled version of this coming. It's going to be great. And we're like, okay, cool. We'll test it, and then sure enough, a year later, it's in the Vario and it's performing amazing, and so it's really cool to have those opportunities, working with some of these amazing partners that we have, and being able to feel like, even though we're not like Patagonia making documentaries about dams and things, we're still trying to do our part to use the best materials in all aspects of it. Performance, sustainability, trying to balance everything. So
yeah. All right, I want to switch to, I think, probably the last topic relating to ISPO specifically, which is there's a lot of really cool and new technology out there, in the insulations, in the fabrics, in zipper pulls. I mean, just all of it. It was really, really cool to see. And I think I left ISPO just thinking along the lines of man, it's really cool that you, our listeners, you, our customers and whatnot, have continued to believe in us and empowered us to be in a position where we get to go and test so much stuff now. And so really, Brigham's calendar is pretty full. Our inboxes are full from just different insulation providers or different whatever it might be, that you come back from a show like that and just think, man, there's so much cool innovation happening. One of the companies emailed us, probably the most recent, and I'd even just totally forgotten about them. I was like, oh yeah, they had a really cool technology and an installation, and there's just a lot of really cool things happening that I'm excited about. And it gives us a laundry list of things to continue to develop and then test in the field and see what sticks, what's fluff, right? We get to kind of sort through that a little bit of what's fluff and what's really proving to be driving results in the field for comfort, for performance, and so on and so forth. But
yeah, it honestly can get a bit overwhelming. Because there's so much out there, so it can get overwhelming to where there's so many options of different technologies or materials to use. And so the question arises, well, what do we use? And I definitely think it's very valuable to always have objectives and have kind of performance parameters and things that we're trying to achieve clearly identified, because the reality is sometimes there's probably 5 different ways to accomplish something, and finding I think that's what I enjoy about my job is finding the right thing. It doesn't mean that it's right for everybody, but it's right for who it's designed for. And that decision-making process, I think, is it's important. I mean, it's important to me. I think it's important to the end user, and because there are so many options out there, and most of them are really fascinating. And there's really good stuff out there, and so it does create a bit of a challenge on our end of just trying to take it all in, absorb the information, and then sift through in terms of what are we trying to accomplish? What's the right way to go about doing this? Because another reality is one product is great for one person and it's horrible for another. And so it's I don't know. I'd say it's a positive challenge in my mind. So
yeah, I think that honestly, without being able to look at it from a perspective of a customer, it'd be impossible to do your job and to design gear, right? Because like if you just chase every shiny object out there, then you develop everything and get nowhere per se. But it is just challenging nonetheless. There's a lot of cool stuff happening, and everyone loves to oversell what their specific innovation can do. And so I think that's one area that I am just grateful for, which is our ability to put things into the field, our ability to spend time in R&D. And we're just in a really good spot, I would say, as a company, too, to just be able to take our time, be very selective. We've got a phenomenal base of products right now, and which means that we've got a bar to meet and exceed every time we consider any other choices. But yeah, there's some interesting ones that'll be interesting to test over the next year. And again, it's interesting, I guess, to just I think Tyler pulled some of this, but as a team, we hiked over, I think, 1,300 miles last year. It'd be interesting to like really sit down and crunch that and see.
So
that doesn't include any
like
personal. Yeah, that's like on the clock miles at Outdoor Vitals. As a team, we hiked 1,300 miles, let alone morning hikes, morning rucks, let alone personal trips, let alone anything like that. And so it's been really good for us, I guess, to just be able to, I don't know, get out there and see what's marketing fluff, what's not, what actually moves the needle, what doesn't, and there's just always interesting stuff to see, I guess, there, and I'm sure you'll see us testing. You might be able to see some of it getting tested over the next year, and we'll see what actually moves the needle or not in years to come.
A side tangent. I mean, it's related, but I don't know. It just came to mind as we were talking to one of our suppliers, our current suppliers, and they were kind of showing us some new insulations. It was just, you'll remember what I'm talking about when we start talking about the balanced insulation, because they showed us one insulation that was like had this really a little more of a unique innovation about it, but then it compromised other things. And then they showed us like another one that was like unique in a different way, but then it had these drawbacks to it that and then in the end they said like, well, yeah, what you're actually using is the most balanced in terms of performance and all these other metrics of like this specific insulation. It's just interesting because there's related to all the options of materials and testing things and always like feeling that the grass is greener off this other material or shiny objects, and oftentimes like it's the actual testing backed up by these conversations we have that really helps like sort out some of these decisions for us, like these fancy new technologies aren't always the best thing for our customer. Maybe somebody else, but not ours.
Yeah, there's more tangents I could go on here, but maybe it's good to call it right there. So I guess just to sum that up, we had a really good time at the show. We learned a lot. It's fun to see just the state of the industry, those that are attending. It's fun to see where our core values kind of stack up and separate us from other companies. And I think the biggest thing that's fun to see in my mind is just, like I think I kind of said some of these things to Brigham as we're walking around, just say like, man, some of these companies are just so big. And like just kind of the thought of like, what our future is going to look like? Are we going to grow to this level? And why are we not growing just massive gobs amounts of some of these people? And Brigham has said, some of these companies are 30, 40 plus years old, right? And as I kind of think backwards on our company, to me, we did start in 2014, but in my mind, in reality, it was more like we started in 2018 with the birth of the Loft Tech jacket. it was really from that inflection point that we were able to get the right partners on our team from there. We were able to start hiring the right staff and build the right team. And so we haven't been at this as long as I sometimes feel from my perspective as the original founder and owner here. But it's real exciting to see where this could go as it just continues to move forward and the team continues to grow and partnerships continue to grow. So. Okay, so that was the first handful of days in Munich. Had a pretty good time hanging out in Munich. It was really cool to be there. There was Christmas markets going on, so basically every evening we'd kind of go out and walk around these Christmas markets where they had their Christmas traditions, such as drinking this hot wine called Glühwein. They had all sorts of trinkets and handmade things. Tyler bought some pretty cool. I don't know what you'd call that, handcrafted chocolate?
Tools.
Tools. They were tools, rusty tools. They were like...
they didn't make it through security, but...
No, they made it. They just hung me up every time.
They required a taste test.
They were like castings.
They weren't weapons.
Yeah, they were chocolate castings of like actual old used hand tools, and they made them look extremely real. Like they made them look like the same rusty patina on the tools that you'd find out in Grandpa's barn. And they
looked real.
Yeah, sure. They looked really real. So I was like,
what was going through security like with those? Like when they stopped you and you're like, that's chocolate. Did you just like,
well, the only time I really got hung up was when we were trying to re-enter the United States.
In the U.S. Yeah.
And like in the Denver airport, there was like 3 checkpoints that you had to go through TSA to get through the border control stuff. Like you had to do it 2 times coming out of the terminal, then you had to go get back in TSA line to get back into the airport for domestic. And those were the ones where I got hung up. And our flights were like really close together, so I was stressing being stuck there. But it was just funny because my pack was like, we all traveled with just the Coda UL for our 8 days. Me and Brigham were essentially 8 days. You guys were 10, right? Or
I counted it as 9, but I could be counting wrong.
So we were all just had the one pack. So my one pack was kind of heavy coming back because I had the chocolate and I had like some Christmas souvenirs that I'd gotten for my wife and daughters, and then I had just all my clothes and some of the trade show stuff. And so they'd like scan my bag. They'd see all the tools in there, and then there was something else that was kind of like throwing it off. I can't remember what it was. Oh, it was like my like tactical metal wallet, and then too, I think I was getting flagged because I was traveling with Brigham, and he Brigham
looks like a terrorist. Apparently,
Brigham wasn't the American that they were looking for when we were flying to Netherlands the other day, and he kept getting like extra screenings, like with no luggage or anything. They just look at him and say, "Come over here," and so. So I think that we were just kind of in for it. We looked a little too.
Brigham looked a little too trained in military, like, just his posture, his stance. I'm sure he just stood out like a sore thumb. So
well, the one time coming, like we were trying to, I think it was when we were trying to get out of Munich, headed home. Brigham got this one extra screening that I just thought was really funny. And so I was like walking down the hall past him, and I thought it was so funny that he got stopped again. So I go to snap a picture of him to send it to Tayson, because Tayson and Bree were down in they were down in Innsbruck, and we were in Munich, and I was going to send it saying like, oh, here's Brigham getting screened again. And I take the picture, and then the TSA people immediately see me taking the photo, and they're like, you can't take a photo here. This is a secure area. And the guy grabs my hand, and he's like, delete that photo right now. So then I like show him that I'm deleting it, and then I walk away, and I'm like, haha, you forgot about the recently deleted album. And like it was all...
It's so silly, man.
Yeah, it was...
Call the anti-terrorism squad in for taking a picture. It was...
Yeah, it was... there was a lot of funny things that we had with that, but the tools made it home. I haven't eaten them yet because I keep showing them to people because they think they're cool.
They're pretty dang cool. I don't know if you should ever eat them.
I'm going to eat them. We ate a lot of chocolate over there, and
yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Chocolate's better than ours. And
so just to skip ahead a little bit, we ate chocolate like
every night.
Every night, somehow we would finish the last batch of chocolate that should have lasted us a week. We'd be done with it. So after the trade show, we'd go and stop by this little mart and pick up more. But on the way home, there was a few people that had like requested us to bring home some chocolate in the family. So we stopped by the same mart actually when we got to Munich at the train station, and basically we'd done the whole trip with just Cody ULs, but I had brought a drifter backpack, which is like our little packable, it just goes into its own little pocket, but it's
Tiny
a 16 liter. It's a 16 liter pack when it's out, right? I had to keep that out of my backpack because it was so full of chocolate that I brought home to distribute amongst family members and friends. So, man, chocolate is definitely way better. I think Hershey's must just be killing American chocolate or something, so we should all boycott them. But yeah, like just your regular bar of chocolate there tastes like super premium chocolate.
And it's like fairly good prices.
They had great flavors.
Not like
strawberry cheesecake, like legit delicious, tasted like strawberry cheesecake chocolate.
Well, you were buying like those 1 pounder.
They only made like certain flavors in
and
the
they
1
were only
pounders.
like $3 still, or €3, you know. So
yeah, it was awesome. So we walked around a lot of the marts and stuff together in Munich, and then after we were done with the trade show, 3 days of the trade show, me and Bree got on a train. We went south down to Austria, to a city called Innsbruck. I would probably describe Innsbruck a bit like a mountain resort town a little bit. Except for it's like there's a lot of people that live there. I think there's 300,000 people. But there's literally like trains, and then you can get on a cable car and go straight up a ski resort out of town into the Alps. So you're right in the middle of the mountains. Just a beautiful, beautiful town. And so me and Bree spent another 3 or so days there. You know, the night markets were just a whole lot of fun. So we were basically back at the night markets eating and looking at trinkets and all sorts of things about every evening. But then, you know, I went up to the top of one of the ski resorts, did a little bit of hiking around and took some photos and things up there. And then, you know, we also took a train that kind of went through the Alps and then circled back around and up to Munich on the way out. So just got to do a lot of sightseeing. Bree, while we were at the trade show, she went and toured a bunch of castles. And then when I was in Innsbruck, we went and toured one castle where the owner of the castle had turned it into a museum pretty early on. So he had like this massive, collection of like armor. He had like 250 armor pieces, like full suits of armor and all sorts of things. So it was a lot of fun. The travel aspect turned out to be just a ton of fun. For me, it felt like, man, I just kind of felt like a taste. Like it was just like, this is really impressive. It's really cool. It's really cool to see how great the train system is over there. And just to think like, man, we're just a train ride from Italy or Greece or France or, you know, any of these areas. Definitely made me want to stay longer and to do more there. So that's definitely on my list, I guess, to get back over there. Maybe the next time, you know, try to get back over there more in the summer months and get a little bit more hiking done or a little bit more touring. But
there is a summer ISPO.
I think that's probably the next time we'll be back maybe it's going to be 2024 summer ISPO unless something changes and we need to go next summer. But it was a good time. I don't know. I mean, these guys ended up going up to the Netherlands. They toured a fulfillment center. And then you guys kind of kicked it around a little bit. You went to, I guess you guys ended up coming to Austria. Mm-hmm. Tyler, how did that conversation go? How did Tyler get you to come tour? Was it you go to KTM, right?
Brigham was sick.
Yeah, I was freaking sick. So I was just trying to get through the day.
Brigham was sick, so I would just choose like the trains and do the navigation, and then we just ended up in Salzburg.
Oh my god!
Pretty much. It was rough. Rough last couple days for me.
We took a train from Munich over to Salzburg, which is like straight east of Munich, and it's beautiful country. It was really foggy, so we didn't get to see much of the mountains there. We saw a giant red stag, which was like, that made our day, seeing that guy up on top of the hill from the train. And then I'm a huge fan of KTM and Husqvarna, so I drug Brigham all through the KTM museum that's right there by their factory in Mattighofen. And it was like we probably had our best food of the entire trip at this tiny little like barbecue shack called Grill Spitz. We got off at the wrong stop off the train, and then we were like, oh crap, we've got to walk 25 minutes to get to the museum.
Oh, dang.
So we're like walking down the street, and then we see this little barbecue place, and it's like 1 p.m. and we're like, we need to have lunch here. So we like sit down, he starts to serve us, and then we realize we were out of euros. And
they
so
didn't take cards, yeah.
Yes, and they didn't take a card.
We already ordered our water. You have to order water, like buy a bottle.
Yeah. Yeah, so then we're like, well, crap, we're walking to an ATM and then walking back to our burgers. So we did that, and it turned out that the food was awesome.
It was amazing.
It was a little family-run like cabin thing with a little grill in it, and it was like we were just having a perfect little lunch out in the country.
Nice.
On a stormy day.
What did you just barbecued meat, or like was there something
Mine was
specific?
a burger.
Oh, yeah.
Mine was a chicken sandwich.
A huge menu.
What was your favorite?
They make their own rubs, and they make their own barbecue. Like I realized, I mean, they were chopping up ingredients for
It took a long time.
So they make their barbecue sauce, and like there were the tiny what's that zester. They basically zested onion and put it in the barbecue sauce. So like I was realizing after a couple bites, I'm like, this is the onion that he was over there zesting over there and making the barbecue sauce for this burger.
Sounds delicious.
There was a lot of depth in the flavor of that. Yeah. The food we had in the Netherlands I liked too. Like they had a bunch of like very traditional European sandwiches, where you don't have any bread on the top and there's no mayo or butter or anything. It's just, but like I liked that food too. But
it's good.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the best food I had on the trip. One of the things I found interesting is that you would buy a slice of pizza and then you would have them do what is that, like when they have the like pork or whatever just spinning all day, like rotisserie.
The doner.
You're talking about the big thing of meat?
Yeah, like a spit.
The souvlaki?
Yeah, so then they'd grind.
It's called a euro.
They'd grind that up and put it on top of your pizza, so then it'd be like extra, like quadruple the meat you typically have on a pizza.
That would be good.
So that was something, I saw that multiple places down in Austria. I think I saw it in Munich, but didn't know what was happening, essentially, because I actually ate one slice of pizza. As I'm eating it, I see another guy order that, and I'm like wondering, why am I at a pizza place with the spit sitting there turning? I'm like, this is weird. And then they got all of it on their pizza. I'm like, yes, I need one of those now. That was interesting. Maybe not the best food, but it was really good. I had a really good schnitzel. I think when I don't remember which restaurant, but that was really good.
That was the like chicken cordon bleu style one that we had at that place by our hotel, by mine and Brigham's hotel. It was.
Was it the Hofbrauhaus?
No, it wasn't Hofbrauhaus. It was that like.
It was the other place we went.
I can't remember the name. I took a picture of the front of it.
That was a good meal.
That was really good. I don't know. I just felt like I had a ton of really good food.
More than anything, I just enjoyed all the different bratwursts. Like bratwurst every day at some point.
Yeah. I mean, it was good. I wish I could think of just more. It's gonna bug me now, but tons of good food. I feel like I probably got photos of food all over mine and my wife's phones just to have to remember that. I feel like that's a big part of traveling, honestly. It's just experiencing the food and that element of culture, I guess. But okay, there's probably more we could go on here, but overall, fantastic and fun trip. I had a lot of fun. I hope you guys had a lot of fun. Sounds like Brigham, between the screenings and getting sick, might not have ended on a high note, but I really enjoyed it. It was one of my favorite trips, especially work trips. But kind of wanted to end with just posing a question. So when we're going on an international trip like this, you guys were mainly doing business stuff, but my bet is that your stuff would have translated into doing outdoor stuff as well. So just want to hear maybe if you guys had any specific pieces of gear that really shined in this type of an application. International travel, 8 days of travel, we're switching hotels and stuff like that multiple times throughout this. So there's just all these different elements going on that kind of make different pieces of gear at times be the highlight. And then obviously the same question goes if there's anything you would have maybe left behind on a trip like this. So anyone care to go first?
Yeah, I've got an easy one. I think what I'm wearing right now, the Vario and the Nova Pro vest, is like a phenomenal combo for travel because the vest is more compact. It also allows the Vario to breathe kind of the way that it was designed. So like when we arrived in Munich, it was 20 degrees. It was like quite cold, and we were, all jet lagged and everything. And so the cold really cut deep, and I was really comfy with the Vario and vest together. All the days were like pretty stormy and wet, and it was very versatile to have both pieces and not feel like it was taking up much room in the pack and be able to be comfy.
That honestly is not a bad situation because I took a Vario and a Nova Pro, and it was overkill to wear both of them at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up packing one or the other depending on just which piece I wanted. It wasn't like the worst case scenario, but it was like that. You probably were utilizing your pieces much more than I was. Well, I was carrying one of my pieces most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. All I brought was a Vario.
And it was cold.
And it was cold in that, like, it wasn't necessarily, it was definitely not colder than most of the time that we go winter backpacking, but most of the time we go backpacking in the winter, we're very active and basically physically working. Whereas this is like slowly walking in giant crowds down a street, which is basically like almost inactivity. So like if it's 28 to 32 degrees, like that's pretty dang cold when you're
pretty high
not
humidity.
Really generating any body heat. And so there were definitely a few times where I wanted more than just the Vario. I think the combo, Tyler, that you had would have been spot on for me. One thing I really appreciated was I did take my rain jacket, but I never got it out and put it on. The few times that it rained or snowed, it was like pretty light, and it was really nice to just not even worry about it. Like with the Vario, just threw my hood on, and I was totally unaffected by any precipitation that happened on that whole trip. So yeah, I definitely, if I was doing it again, I don't have a vest, but I would get one and take one with the Vario combo.
Okay, that's a good highlight. Any other highlights?
Just in my travel pack, so with Coda UL, I took 2 packing cubes, the standard OV cube, and then 2 dot bags. I used one dot bag to take just like as a hand carry on the plane that had like charging cords, charger, headphones, stuff like that. That was pretty handy to have. And then having the 2 cube system worked really well. I kind of there's some stuff that I just throw in the bottom of the pack, and then as the trip went on, I would just start using one of the cubes for like just dirty clothes. And then, yeah, I don't know. The backpack, just FYI, we flew out of a very small airport in Utah using a regional jet, like a 48 passenger, and both of our Coda ULs fit in the overhead. Like that's something I hear frequently is like, oh, I don't know if that's TSA approved for regional jet. It definitely worked, and then
even
all planes, everything
tools.
bigger. Like, yeah, so multiple times over, we've proven this over that the Coda UL is good for like really small regional jets all the way up to international flights. So,
yeah, I mean that jet is so small that your typical hard carry-on case, like a rolling luggage, they check every single rolling luggage on that.
They were paging the whole
the
airport prior to us getting on, like basically saying, check your carry-on, and we just ignored it and walked on with them.
Yeah, and I mean, I flew on the same jet, obviously, just a day earlier and was able to get my Coda on. I would just also build on your favorite with the Coda. For me and Bree, there were times where like Bree had to walk around for the majority of a day while I was, we checked out of this Airbnb. She's walking around until we can get on a train. So she has all of her gear with her on her back essentially for 5 hours of the day. Instead of having to have rolling luggage and all of that kind of stuff, to be able to just have it in the Coda UL, able to use a quality hip belt, make it very comfortable. She's basically just walking around downtown Munich, killing hours of time. But then for us, it's like we're hopping on trains, we're hopping off trains, and this is with everything. Like we weren't leaving half of our gear here while we were traveling around. We had everything while we're hopping on trains, walking around markets, getting back on trains, getting on airplanes. It's just it was definitely like the key piece of gear, I feel like, for this too, because then when you get to some of these locations, you dump your pack and then you just compress up all the side pouches, and then I use it as the day pack to still carry, an extra jacket, to carry your gloves because it was dang cold. Heck, I was even using leggings, underneath my pants when it was getting real cold and you're just standing around on the streets. At these night markets, I'd walk into a bathroom, throw those on, and so I was carrying, those types of things around in the Coda. And it was definitely just a very, very useful piece for this trip. Man, for me, I was going to say the Coda, but other key pieces of gear that I had, I'll just talk about wool for just half a second. Wool, a lot of times is just talked about for base layers, for backpacking, for this. For travel, wool is incredible. So if you already have wool for backpacking, that will migrate over to travel incredibly well. And the main reason why is the low odor. So if you're using it multiple days in a row because you're not doing a lot of laundry, things like that, they're incredible pieces for things like that. And then obviously too, like I was using our Turn hoodie and our Turn t-shirts because they're so lightweight, they can dry extremely fast. And so really the name of the game to keep your pack extremely light is to have less laundry to do, less clothing items. And so the ability to wash out a piece of wool and have the odor come right out of it, even if you didn't have soap handy, is super, super useful and allows you to take way less laundry or total clothing items on a trip like this. So I actually filmed a video earlier today going through all of the gear that I took on this trip, and I was under 12 pounds worth of gear for 9 to 10 days worth of travel. Because I'm able to rotate through wool items of clothing. I'm able to wash that really easy, even in a sink. And so to me, just the ability to utilize wool, whether it's our Turn hoodie, our Turn t-shirts, I use Dragon Wool boxers. I also use like for our members, you can buy Darn Tough socks through us. Anywhere that you can use some of those things, it's very comfortable for travel, but also it just allows you to extend the longevity and gives you the ability to just rinse them out versus having to severely launder something on the go. So I'll stick with that. Okay. Anything you guys would have left behind? I have one, I guess I'll say. I did bring a pair of small binoculars, and I used them a little bit, but I think I'm going to be switching my small binoculars out for a small monocular that would take about half of that weight and probably a third of that space for backpacking and hiking. I really do love the ability to have a binocular or something like that with me, just because I'm out there because I just love the landscape, and that's something I really enjoy, but I think I could cut that down by at least half the weight and maybe a third of the bulk if I, go and find a good monocular to try. Because it's not like I'm sitting and looking through my binoculars for long periods of time. So I think a binocular would be just fine. So that's one. That was kind of I think binoculars I took are like 19 ounces total or something like that. And so that was, 19 ounces of space and weight in my pack that I didn't need to carry.
I definitely would not have brought my laptop. That was dumb. I don't know. I have this fear in the back of my head that I'm going to get an email and need to explain some design thing to a factory, and I don't want to wait. And of course that didn't happen. So I don't know. I felt bothered that I had the laptop the whole time.
Could you do it with the iPad if you just had the iPad?
Probably not.
Okay.
But
that's a tough one. This was my first international trip ever where I did not bring a laptop. And the only reason that I felt comfortable doing that was because I have an app on my phone called LastPass that ensures that I can log into anything that I need, right? It's just a password saver, right? And so ever since I got that on my phone, I've been able to feel like I don't need my laptop. And for instance, out there, while I was out there, I needed to make a payment to a supplier that became priority, and I needed to do that right away. I was trying to do so on the app on my phone for this payment provider, and it just wasn't working. And so I went to Google Chrome on my phone, and I logged in the traditional way and made the payment the traditional way, and it was just fine. And so for me, now that I don't have to worry about designing or drawing on Adobe Illustrator or anything like that, that's all someone else's job. I felt very empowered to just travel with my phone, and it saved me a ton of weight and space. So that was a huge win for me, I would say.
I packed my laptop and I used it 4 of the days. So I guess I'm still stuck with it. Because I did end up having to use it quite a bit, like whether it was payroll or spreadsheets or
if hypothetically you guys were traveling for personal enjoyment, though.
Oh, absolutely not.
Definitely would not take the laptop.
There's no need for it.
So that's good. Yeah. That's good feedback. Any other pieces of gear you'd have left behind?
The trade show booth. Lugging that thing around all over the place. We had just a big piece of luggage that we had to check and in the airport.
That would have sucked. I forgot you guys had to go through security and go get your bags, and it's every time you cross a border or essentially you're landing in a new country.
Bree to take it home.
Yeah, we dodged
Bree was
pretty
wanting
hard.
room for souvenirs, but Tayson wasn't having it.
No, I fought that pretty hard. So. Okay, I think we'll go ahead and call it, guys. I really appreciate you guys listening to this. Obviously, it's always interesting to learn more about just the state of the outdoor industry, learn a little bit more about us, and just talk international travel. I hope that you guys are inspired to go do international travel, to explore. To me, every time I go and cross borders and whatnot, I develop a new interest and love for the culture, the people. I also just find like this next area of just like again, I touched into the Alps, and it's like, man, I want to see more of the Alps. I want to see different sides. I'd love to backpack or go hike. It seems like every time I travel, I just find more amazing things to look at, to put on the list for a future. And so yeah, I think everyone should really consider international travel. I think it's well worth doing. I think it's also well worth being very conscious about your purchases. Really appreciate any of you out there that have trusted us with your purchases. I hope that you're extremely satisfied and that we'll continue to deliver on everything that we develop and sell to our customers. So if you guys have any questions, anything you'd like us to answer on the podcast in the future, reach out to us on our YouTube channel. That's probably the easiest way. Leave a comment there. Or I believe you can reach out to us at liveultralightpodcast@gmail.com, and we will take those. I think we've probably got a handful of questions that have been asked, so we'll have to make sure in a future podcast that we really take the time to go through and answer those, but we will answer those, so leave us a comment. Make sure you guys are subscribed. If you liked this podcast, share it with someone, and we'll see you guys on a future one.